Protect, test and isolate. That's the roadmap announced by the French Prime Minister to ease the country's strict lockdown due to end on the 11th of May. Edouard Philippe says after the lockdown ends, it will be an exercise in learning to live with the virus until a vaccine is found. That will involve making masks available for the entire population and carrying out 700,000 COVID-19 tests per week. France has had one of the longest-running lockdowns in Europe.
We have to protect our citizens without bringing the country to the point where the economy falls apart. We are walking a thin line. Too much carelessness and the pandemic will start up again. Too much caution and the whole country will collapse. The plan I have announced allows for us to follow that thin line.
Our international correspondent Annelise Borges has more from Paris.
France's Prime Minister Edouard Philippe spoke about a post-May 11 plan that will be based on 3 pillars: to protect, to test and to isolate. Speaking of protection, Edouard Philippe says that certain rules that we have now grown accustomed to, like hygiene measures like washing one's hands, but also social distancing rules, will remain as important as ever. But he also spoke about the issue of masks and promised that everyone in France will get a mask. As many as 20 million masks are supposed to be available come May 11th every week. He also spoke about the government continuing to distribute those masks to hospitals and schools, and pharmacies will be able to sell those masks directly. As many as 5 million masks will be distributed to NGOs that can then redistribute them to the most vulnerable among the population, notably homeless people. He also spoke about testing, and as you mentioned, 700,000 tests a week. That is the plan that the government wants to put in place by May the 11th, and it will include a vast number of institutions, including veterinary clinics in those tests. 100% of the costs of those tests will be absorbed by the state. And once someone is tested positive, there comes the third pillar of this plan. It will have to isolate, and that will involve the discipline of the French citizens. Edouard Philippe says that isolation is not a punishment. People will be able to choose how to do it. For example, they can choose to isolate at home with every single member of their household, or instead go to one of the dedicated spaces for that. The government has put in place many isolation cells, if you will, in hotels, for example. And in that third pillar, he spoke about this contradictory app, the contact tracing app that everyone here in France has been debating and wondering about. Edouard Philippe announced that the government changed its mind once again, Oliver. We were not expecting members of parliament to be able to debate and vote on that app. Well, it turns out the app is not even ready. So Edouard Philippe says that a debate and a vote will be able to take place come the next few weeks.